I awakened the most useless F-rank ability in history, a 1 cubic meter storage space. The entire school laughed at me, saying I was nothing more than a tiny box made to hold other people's stuff. But none of them understood the true terror hidden inside the laws of space itself. What if I covered half of the space over someone's head and left the other half floating in the air, then suddenly closed it? Right. It would become an absolute spatial cut capable of slicing through any defense. And what if I divided that 1 cubic meter into 10 separate spaces, each only 10 cubic centimeters in size? Next, Linan. A cold mechanical voice echoed throughout the awakening hall of Jiangcheng First High School, and in an instant, thousands of eyes turned toward me. Wearing my faded old uniform, I slowly stepped out from the corner of the hall and walked onto the stage before placing my hand on the awakening stone. In this world, monsters existed everywhere, and society was built on brutal rankings. The ability you awakened would almost decide your entire future. It would determine how far you could climb in life, and whether your family could escape the lowest class of slavery. That was why everyone was staring at me right now. But the moment the awakening stone reacted, the light it released was unbelievably weak. A faint gray glow flickered from it like a candle on the verge of dying in the wind. The entire hall went silent for a second. Then everyone burst into laughter. That's an awakening? Gray light? What kind of trash ability is that? I've never even heard of it before. It probably hasn't even reached level 1. The registrar mentor looked at the words appearing on the light screen and shook his head in disappointment before announcing coldly, Linan, awakened ability, level 1 storage space. Additional details. Space size, 1 cubic meter. The moment he finished speaking, the whole hall exploded with laughter like a pack of lunatics. 1 cubic meter? Isn't that just a tiny box? Even logistics companies wouldn't hire him. That storage space is way too small. As expected from someone from the slums, even his ability smells poor. Mockery came from every direction, but I simply pulled my hand away from the stone in silence. As I stared at those cold words floating on the screen, there wasn't even a trace of anger on my face. No resentment, no sadness, just emptiness. I already understood something a long time ago. When you have no power, emotions are worthless. But at that exact moment, a dazzling golden light suddenly exploded from backstage, instantly stealing everyone's attention. Young Master Joey! An S rank. That's definitely an S rank. That's the Crimson Lotus Flame. As expected from the bloodline of the Zhou family, amid the deafening screams, Josie, the heir of the Zhou family, stepped onto the stage surrounded by blazing golden flames. His luxurious uniform, his arrogant expression, the overwhelming aura around him, everything about him screamed superiority. Unlike me, he was born in the place most people could only dream of reaching. And now he had awakened one of the strongest attack-type abilities imaginable. From this moment onward, wealth, status, and a glorious future would naturally fall into his hands. But instead of enjoying the praise around him, he walked directly toward me. His eyes looked down on me like I was nothing more than dirt beneath his feet, and a cruel grin slowly spread across his face. Linan, I was wondering who it was, he said while raising his burning finger toward me. So, it's just the little rat hiding in the sewers. He pointed that burning finger directly at my chest and mocked me slowly, enjoying every second of it. Level 1 storage space, 1 cubic meter, perfect, he said with a cruel smile. When your beggar little sister finally dies, you can use that tiny space to store her belongings. The moment he mentioned my sister, the coldness in my eyes changed instantly. A terrifying killing intent flashed through them for just a second, but Josie noticed it immediately. Instead of backing down, he laughed even more arrogantly. What, you're angry? Dar, he sneered. Someone like you, even breathing the air of Jiang City is a waste. After saying that, he turned toward Teacher Wang, and the tone in his voice wasn't a request at all. It was an order. There's still one remaining slot for a poor student to enter War College, right? If I remember correctly, that slot was supposed to be his. Teacher Wang's face turned pale as he stammered nervously. Based on grades and overall evaluation, that slot originally belonged to student Lin An. Not anymore. Josie's voice was calm, but it carried the weight of someone who controlled life and death itself. I don't want a useless piece of trash attending the same school as me. Someone unqualified even to become cannon fodder shouldn't be wasting resources. Teacher Wang still tried to resist weakly. This goes against the rules. Rules? Josie let out a cold laugh, and flames instantly burst beneath his feet. In Jiang City, the words of the Zhou family are the rules. The entire hall fell silent. Not a single person spoke for me. Everyone simply stared at me with mixed expressions in their eyes. Some pitied me, some enjoyed my humiliation, and others were simply waiting to see me completely break apart. But I didn't break. I just slowly raised my head and looked at Josie with terrifying calmness, as if I was already looking at a dead man walking. That expression was exactly what he hated most. The smile on his face gradually disappeared. Good, he said darkly. I don't like that look in your eyes. Instructor Wang let out a helpless sigh before handing me a form. "Sign it," he said quietly. "This is your withdrawal application. Now that your ability has awakened, there's no point staying in school anymore. Just accept your fate. Go work at the factories in the Eastern District. Tighten screws for the rest of your life. At least you'll survive somehow." I took the application and glanced at it silently before grabbing the pen and writing my name on the signature line. My handwriting was steady, without even the slightest hesitation. After signing it, I handed the form back, turned around, and walked away without saying a single word of protest. Because according to the rules I lived by, I never argued with people who were already close to death. The moment I stepped outside the school gates, the sky suddenly darkened. Lightning split apart the clouds, and heavy rain came crashing down from above. Within seconds, I was completely soaked, but I couldn't even feel the cold anymore. I just kept walking numbly through the rain. Then suddenly, the cheap secondhand phone in my pocket, its screen cracked like a spiderweb, began vibrating violently. The moment I answered it, a cold voice from the hospital spoke from the other side. "This is First City Hospital. Your sister Lincia's Abbas Frost syndrome has suddenly worsened. She has already been transferred to the intensive care unit. Payment of 100,000 star coins must be completed within 24 hours. If the cost of special drug number 1 cannot be covered, then according to hospital policy, treatment will be terminated and the patient will be discharged from the ICU. 100,000 star coins. The number slammed into my mind like a giant hammer. For rich people, it was probably just another meaningless amount of money. But for me, it was an impossible astronomical sum. I hurriedly begged, "Doctor, please, just give me a few more days. I'll definitely find a way." But before I could finish, the call was abruptly disconnected. Only the cold dial tone remained in my ear. I stood there alone in the pouring rain as my fist slowly tightened. The withdrawal application, already soaked by the storm, crumpled in my hand until it turned into mud. And along with it, the last trace of restraint inside me completely disappeared. All that remained was madness and absolute determination. The school was gone. Legal paths were gone too. This world and its rules had never planned to give me or Lincia any chance to survive in the first place. So if that was the case, then I would take survival with my own hands. I suddenly turned around and walked toward the slums at the edge of the city, a place abandoned by light and order long ago. The deeper I went, the darker the streets became. Eventually, I stepped into the deepest, filthiest alley in the entire district, a place so dark it didn't even have a single streetlight. And at that moment, the look in my eyes completely changed. If that's how it is, I muttered to myself coldly, then I'll gamble my life to take what I need. But the moment those words left my mouth, a disgusting smell suddenly rushed out from the depths of the alley, a nauseating mix of blood and rotting beast flesh. Then slowly, 2 bright red lights appeared in the darkness ahead like floating lanterns. But those weren't lights at all. They were eyes. Those red lights were a pair of eyes. A Tier 2 monster that should only exist outside the city walls. A shadow wolf. This kind of monster was infamous for its terrifying speed and razor-sharp claws. It was the nightmare of every beginner ability user. If an ordinary person encountered one, surviving even 3 seconds would already be considered a miracle. The moment the thought of running away appeared in my head, I crushed it instantly. Turning my back against a wolf would only guarantee an even faster death. So instead of retreating, I stepped half a pace forward. I lowered my center of gravity, and in a single motion, my right hand grabbed a rusted, sharp piece of metal lying on the ground and raised it in front of my chest. This was the instinct carved into me after countless broken bones and bloody underground fights in the slums. When facing an enemy stronger than you, the more afraid you are of losing, the faster you die. Only by showing a fiercer madness, a willingness to throw away your own life, could you gain even the slightest chance to survive. One man and one wolf stood facing each other in the muddy darkness of the alley. Then, in the next second, the shadow wolf moved. It lunged like a black phantom straight for my throat. Its speed was so fast I could barely follow it with my eyes. Only through the instincts I had sharpened through countless life and death fights was I able to twist my body to the right at the final moment. Slash! I avoided having my throat torn open, but the wolf's claws still ripped deeply into my left shoulder and arm. A huge chunk of flesh was torn away instantly, and blood exploded out from the wound. The pain was so intense my vision nearly blacked out, but instead of retreating, that pain ignited the savagery buried deep inside my bones. I roared in fury and used the momentum of my spin to drive the rusted metal straight toward its eye with all my strength. The attack was already fast and vicious enough, but I still underestimated the brutality of a Tier 2 monster. Even while airborne, the shadow wolf forcefully tilted its head. The metal failed to pierce its eye and only slammed against its skull with a metallic crack. It barely sank half an inch before getting stuck. The pain completely enraged the shadow wolf. With a violent shake of its head, the metal flew out of my hand and I was thrown hard onto the ground. What followed after that was a truly savage fight. We rolled through filthy water and mud while the wolf repeatedly shredded my flesh apart with its claws. Meanwhile, I fought like a mad beast that had completely lost its sanity. I abandoned almost all defense and attacked with everything I had. My fists, elbows, knees, even my teeth, aiming for every deadly spot I could reach. 3 deep wounds stretched across my back all the way to the bone. Blood continued pouring non-stop from my shoulder while my strength and consciousness rapidly faded away. My movements became slower and slower. I was gasping desperately for air. Finally, the Shadow Wolf seized the opportunity and slammed me violently against the wall. The back of my head crashed hard and my vision instantly blurred. In the next second, the wolf's massive body pinned me down completely. Its razor-sharp claws pierced into my shoulders, locking me against the corner so tightly I couldn't move at all. I was trapped. The wolf slowly lowered its head until its disgusting, rotten breath was less than 5 centimeters away from my throat. I could clearly see the stains covering its fangs. Despair crawled through my entire body like freezing ice. But at that exact moment, Lynch's smiling face suddenly appeared in my mind. Big brother, you'll definitely become the strongest ability user someday. Big brother, when I get better, I want to eat tongulu from the shop in the Southern District. My eyes trembled violently. I couldn't lose, because the moment I lost, she would die too. What about Lyncha? What about the 100,000 star coins? What about the hospital saying they would stop her treatment? At the exact moment the Shadow Wolf opened its giant mouth, ready to crush my skull, my dying and chaotic mind suddenly entered a state of terrifying calmness I had never experienced before. Pain, fear, despair, it all felt like something had sucked those emotions away completely. Only 2 things remained in my world: the wolf's approaching jaws and the ability everyone mocked for being useless. Storage space. What exactly was space? It was an invisible box. Something you couldn't touch or see, but it undeniably existed. And if it was a box, then it had edges. And every time those edges opened and closed, things would appear and disappear along with them. Then suddenly, an unbelievably insane idea exploded inside my mind. What if something happened to be caught exactly between those edges? My eyes locked onto the space between the Shadow Wolf's head and neck. In the next second, I poured every ounce of my focus, every bit of determination, and even my very life into a single crystal clear command unlike anything I had ever experienced before. Lower half of the storage space, cover the wolf's head. Upper half, remain floating above its neck. The edge of the space, positioned perfectly between the head and neck. Close. The storage space suddenly shut. Instantly, the crushing weight pinning me down disappeared. Then a hot, sticky liquid exploded across my face and body like a broken dam. I collapsed against the wall, gasping desperately for air, and when I finally looked down, my pupils shrank violently. The Shadow Wolf's body was still lying on top of my legs, but its head was gone. The cut on its neck was horrifyingly smooth, as if it had been sliced apart by the sharpest laser imaginable. Skin, veins, bones, nerves, everything had been severed with absolute perfection. There wasn't even the slightest rough edge. Without realizing it, I slowly closed my eyes and sent my consciousness into my ability space. Then, in the very next moment, my entire body trembled violently. The severed head of the Shadow Wolf was floating silently inside that tiny 1 cubic meter space. The savagery and shock from before its death were still frozen inside its eyes. Even the severed surface was as smooth as glass. At that moment, I finally understood the true horror of my ability.
Follow, like, comment, and share for part 2.